Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my recordings. In this recording, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about a topic that has been on my mind for just a few days. And this has been on my mind because of some news that I've been reading online, as well as a few videos that I've watched regarding the state of the economy. And as you guys know, I like to look at things that are happening outside of comics, and then I like to pull them into comics because that is a fun activity for me. And so hopefully this will be a video that you all will enjoy. Hopefully it's a video that you all will be able to comment on down in the comment section, because I'm going to be doing a whole lot of pontification in this video, right? And I don't think that I'm going to offer up any answers. I may be asking some questions of myself. I may be throwing some concepts out there for you guys to noodle, and then I'll be looking forward to reading your comments down in the comment section. So wherever you land on this thing, don't be afraid. Leave the comments down there and we will have the conversation, because to me, that is the fun of doing some of this stuff, especially when there is no right answer. But before we get going on this topic, I want to let it be known that I am not talking about one of the third rails in this recording. And there are a couple of third rails that I don't touch. And the one that I'm speaking about specifically is politics. I am not talking about politics. Let me put that out there. And I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. I'm doing it because I've actually had people reach out to me recently asking about the ads that play in my videos. And I've had people ask whether I decide what ads are shown in my videos. And the answer is no. In some cases, I will create a place for an ad to be placed by Google. In some cases, they create a place for that ad to go, but I do not select the ads themselves. Like, I have no control over those ads. I oftentimes don't even know what the ads are unless I go back and watch the videos myself, which I do from time to time, but the videos that I see might be different from the videos that you see depending upon someone's ad buy. So let it be known that I do not select the ads that are actually shown. The other reason why I'm putting this disclaimer up front is because I've actually had people make comments to me, send me emails and direct messages about the comments that other people have made on my videos that are of a political nature. And I want to again assure people that I am not talking about politics, and I cannot control what people say in the comment section. Sometimes I will hide certain comments, to be honest with you. If they're interesting, let's put it that way, I will hide them. But I also don't want to dictate what people say. And so you probably won't see me going back and forth with the people on those particular things. And I would definitely encourage folks, to think about what it is that you're actually commenting, and just ask yourself whether this is the right place for those type of things, considering that isn't a focus, right? And rest assured, if you leave those comments, people are reading them and people are forming opinions, and people do reach out to me. So just be aware of that. The other reason why I'm again putting this disclaimer up front is because I may potentially talk about some things over the course of this video that could be viewed as political in nature, but I am simply bringing up some of these facts so as to put this information out there to support an argument that I am making. It is not necessarily to be political, but it's to basically say, here is some evidence for us to think about as we talk about this overarching type of topic. All right. So with that, with that long-winded disclaimer out of the way, let's dig into the topic at hand. And the topic is we're gonna kind of meander. I'm gonna be honest with you. We're going to meander just a little bit. And part of what I want to start off with is talking about those people that have insisted that we are headed towards a comic book crash. And I will tell you that I do not think that we are headed towards a comic book crash in the near term. And I say that for several reasons. My arguments, it's a multifaceted argument that I will attempt to simplify here. The comic book market is not a homogeneous thing. It is not a singular thing that is influenced by just a few factors. The comic book market is actually, in my opinion, and I think this is an opinion that is shared by several people because I've actually done a couple of videos on it and I've read the comments of people like, yeah, I think that that's right. The comic book market, I believe, is broken up into sectors the same way that the stock market is broken up into sectors. There's a tech sector, there's a biotech sector, there is an energy sector. There are multiple sectors, and yes, there are things that could impact the stock market as a whole, but then there are also events and things that can impact individual sectors but not affect other sectors. That's why people diversify, so as to spread the risk across multiple sectors, which may, allow them to hedge their bets, right, and not take massive losses, right, and to maybe even have positive upside, right, if things go incredibly well for them. So the comic book market is not this homogenous thing. It is actually comprised of sectors. So you have, and you may or may not agree with all of this, but there are sectors, like there is a new comic book market. New comic book sector. There is a secondary market, which is old comics. There are, original art. There are collectibles. These are just 4 sectors under the umbrella, if you will, of the comic book market. And these sectors can operate independently. And in some cases, there are events that will happen that could affect multiple sectors, but there are also events that will affect a singular thing. So for example, let's do an example. If the parent company of Marvel and DC, so Warner Media and Disney, decided that they were no longer going to print new comics, that would have a detrimental effect on the new comic book sector. Without a doubt, that would affect the new comic book sector. It will affect local comic shops, no doubt. But you could potentially make an argument that original art would be unaffected. Like let's just, for the sake of this illustration, right? This is for illustrative purposes only. You could make an argument that original art would not be affected if the Warner Media and the Disney company decided to no longer make comics, right? Because you still have this fantastic artwork out there by Jack King Kirby and these other artists. That original art doesn't suddenly go to zero because they're no longer printing Immortal Hulk, right? That just doesn't happen. One could make an argument that if they stop making new comics, that maybe original art would actually go up in value. You might be able to make that argument that could happen. Likewise, if Sideshow and XM Studios decided they were no longer going to make statues, that would affect the collectible market. Absolutely. But what impact would that have on new comics or on original art? Probably none. Probably no impact at all. So this is just a gross illustration of how there is a market, there are sectors below that market, and sometimes these markets are independent, and sometimes they are influenced by what happens in another, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. So that's a long way of saying that I do not believe that the comic book market will crash because there are multiple sectors, right? And so the question that I would always want to ask somebody, so you believe that the comic book market is going to crash, specifically which part of the market? These people will throw out these generic statements. The comic book market is going to crash. Well, which part of it? Which part specifically? And why do you believe that to be true? Right? And people will throw out different arguments, some of which holds water, some of which don't. But my point here is that I do not believe that all of comicdom, is going to suddenly crash and burn. I do not believe that. But I think that we could be headed towards some interesting times ahead. That is my belief. I'm not talking about a crash, but what I am talking about is there could be some things that happen in the secondary market which could create opportunities for people. And I want to dig into this issue just a little bit here. And this is where we may, again, slide over into something that could be deemed political, but really is not designed to be political at all. That is not my objective. So there were a lot of people that were making these statements that we were headed towards a comic book crash because of the shelter-in-place order that kind of rippled across the United States, right? And people were saying that this is the end. This is end of comics. It is all going to go away. And I think we can probably say by this point, several months in, even with Diamond shutting down and DC changing its distribution model and its day for new comic book day, with all of that stuff, right? I think we can probably say that comic books are in an okay place, right? I think that they're in a much better place than okay, but I'm trying to hedge my bets here, right? Let's just say that they're in an okay place. And I say that because there are some really fantastic comics that are being printed right now. People are still buying and reading and enjoying comics on an ongoing basis. And I just finished reading Three Jokers earlier today, and I can tell you that that is a fantastic comic. But you could easily cite any number of books from Marvel or Image, Boom Studios, some of these other independents, DC. You can cite numerous comics, numerous titles that are doing incredibly well. And so I think that comics are in a great place, but we are just going to say, let's say an okay place, right? But again, I think that with us being where we are at this point in the year, we can probably say that comics are okay. We have not necessarily seen prices decline for comics. In some cases, they've actually gone up, which some people would say is a sign that there's a bubble, that a crash is coming. We're going to just set that aside for just a moment and just say that we are actually in an okay place. But here's the thing. We are headed potentially towards a little bit of a storm. And I say that because COVID isn't going away. When the shelter in place was put in place, we all assumed, I think, this was going to be a temporary thing, that we were only going to do this for maybe a month, and then a month became 2, and then 3 months, and then 4 months. It's probably safe to say that 2020 is a bust. It is probably safe to say that 2020 is just going to be a bust of a year. And I'll be honest with you, if I had the superpower of a fast forward button, I would smash it in a heartbeat, because this is not a good year in any way, shape, or form. There are a lot of pressures and stresses on everybody. Whether you are a single person or a family that has children that are trying to do remote schooling, there is a lot of pressure. People are unemployed, and there are people that are unemployed that want to go to work that cannot go to work because their place of employment is still shut down. And it is very unfortunate when you have somebody that wants to work that cannot work, that is furloughed or laid off or just unemployed. It is a tough situation. And if there's anybody out there that has children that are doing distance learning, you know how brutal that is, right? And I was talking to some teachers recently that were saying there were certain parts of their school district where the children did not have internet access and didn't even have computers to access the internet if they did have it. And so the school district is putting mobile hotspots in place and giving these kids devices so that they can actually connect to the internet, so that they can actually participate in class. This is a tough year in so many different ways. Now, here's the thing. You add to it the fact that people are not working, and the stimulus money, the supplemental employment benefits have gone away. And there is a lot of debate right now in the government as to what happens next, right? There are executive orders that are being written. There are lots of debates that are happening where people are billions of dollars, right? Different and what they want to do. And again, these are some of the political statements that I am not trying to make political. I'm simply making some statements here that there is a lot of uncertainty as to whether people are going to have the financial resources that they need to pay bills and to eat. It is a tough time. Now, add to that, COVID's not going away. There's uncertainty around what is going to happen with the pocketbook. And we are now headed into Q4. Q4, the holiday season, is a extra tough time of the year. In a good year, the holiday season is a tough time of the year for so many reasons. And 2020 has already been rough, and it is potentially going to get rougher as we head towards October, November, and December and the holiday season. And people want to spend time with relatives, and maybe they can get on a plane, maybe they can drive, maybe they can see their relatives. If they can't see their relatives, then maybe they want to send presents, but it's hard to send presents and gifts and things like that when you don't have a job. You can't take your family, your kids, if you have them, to see grandma and grandpa and extended relatives to have this Merry Christmas or this fantastic holiday season. So maybe you want to buy extra gifts for the kids so that they can have a good time, regardless of the fact that they may still be sheltering in place and still wearing masks in December. But that's tough to do if you don't have a job. And so my thought is this, is that we could get to a point as we move into Q4 where there are opportunities that are created in the secondary market. That being the market where individuals that have comic book collections that don't have jobs, that don't get the money from the federal or state government, have to make some really tough decisions about whether they sell their collections. And this, some people may hear this and they may hear this as being a callous thing. And I am certainly, if you know me, you know that I am not being callous. But what I am doing is setting the table for what potentially could happen. And I'm encouraging people to think about what could happen. Because either you might be in a position to buy one of these collections and essentially help somebody out, or you could be the person that actually needs the help and is trying to sell a collection. And so I am trying to be super practical about what could be a very delicate and difficult thing for everybody involved. I've bought books and collections from people that have financial problems. It is tough because you feel bad. You feel good for yourself that you're able to get these books, but you feel bad for the person because they're having to sell their collection and they really don't want to, but they need to. It is a tough emotion to deal with. And on the other side, as the person that has to sell the collection to pay the bills, to put food on the table, to pay the rent or whatever it happens to be, having to sell your collection is a tough thing. And neither party is truly happy with what is actually happening. And so what I'm saying is, if what I believe could happen in Q4 of this year happens, we want to start to think about this in advance. How do we navigate these precarious waters that we may find ourselves in, either as a buyer of a collection or as a seller of a collection? How do you prepare for that? What does the conversation sound like? Well, first, how do you find the collection? And if the collection finds you, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with a buddy or a friend or a member of the comic book community that comes to you with this type of challenge? I have to sell my collection because I need the money. How do you deal with that? Because you might not even go looking for it. It may actually find you and you have to deal with it, right? So what do? You have to think about it. If you decide to go find these collections, how do you handle that type of scenario where you're having to negotiate with somebody you know needs the money to be able to do certain things? How do you handle that? If you are a seller, how do you approach somebody to have that type of conversation to say, hey, I don't really want to sell this, but I need to sell this? How do you deal with that? How do you, as a seller, find people to actually buy your collections? Nobody wants to talk about these things, but we all could potentially find ourselves in this situation in the fourth quarter of this year. I was talking to my VP earlier today, and we were talking about parents, and we were talking about, as our parents get older, some of the difficult conversations that we have to have with our loved ones that are not fun but are necessary. You know, we were talking about the conversations that we have to have with our wives, when it comes to wills and all of that, other stuff that comes along with it, the wills and the trust and the life insurance policies. Not fun conversations, but they are necessary conversations that have to be had. And so how do you prepare your mind to have those type of conversations? Part of it is you start early. You start to anticipate what could potentially happen, and you start to role play it over and over in your head. You start to organize your thoughts. How do I want to handle this if this presents itself? What does that conversation sound like? What do I say? What do they say? Is this the right thing to do? If you think about these things in advance, if you anticipate them occurring, then I think you're much more likely to handle them in a good way. And I don't want to see people ever have to sell their collections because they need the money. But part of why we buy these comics is for the purpose of investment in some ways, right? Some ways we are just truly enjoying the comics, but they are also investments. And sometimes you have to sell an investment in order to do what you have to do. And so I just want people to think about this stuff in advance, because we could find ourselves in a situation, as much as none of us wants to be there, we could find ourselves there. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this recording. And again, not purposefully political in any way, shape, or form. It's really truly about the comics, and it's really truly about how do we prepare ourselves for what could be a very interesting fourth quarter, and maybe even a first quarter to 2021. Because it does not appear that COVID is going to be going away. But I want to thank you guys for listening to this recording. I don't know if enjoyment is the right word, but maybe you found the video interesting. And if so, I definitely want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up. If you have thoughts, drop them in the comment section. If you've had these conversations with people, what did they sound like? How did you feel? How did you navigate those waters? If you had to sell your collection, how did you approach it? If you bought a collection, what were your thoughts? Leave all of that stuff down in the comment section, because believe it or not, there are a lot of people that read the comments in the comment section and actually take away a lot of additional meaning and understanding from the comments that other people leave behind. So I definitely want to encourage you guys to take the time to leave your thoughts behind. Share them with the other members of the comic book community, because I think we will all be made better for it. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. If you want to send me an email, you can do that as well to reggie@regiecollects.com. But if you need me, I am not too hard to find. Take care.